The waiter placed the dessert in front of me. Scripted chocolate letters spelled out, "Happy Anniversary," across the white plate. Connor smiled like everything was fine, and then slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "Just read it," he said casually, reaching for his wine glass. I stared at the envelope, my heart already knowing what my brain refused to accept. My fingers trembled as I pulled out the papers. Divorce petition. Filed 3 days ago. No warning. No fight. Just ink and betrayal on our 3rd anniversary. The restaurant noise faded to a dull hum. I watched Connor sip his wine, completely calm, like he'd just handed me a dinner menu instead of the end of our marriage. My chest locked. I couldn't breathe properly. The waiter smiled at us from across the room, completely oblivious to the fact that my world was crumbling between the appetizer and dessert course. I forced myself to stay calm. I would not cry. I would not scream. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break in this expensive restaurant where everyone knew us. My name is Maggie Colburn, and I am not the woman Connor thought he married. He saw my kindness as weakness. He thought I wouldn't fight back. He assumed I'd fold quietly, sign whatever papers he put in front of me, and disappear from his life without making things difficult. He was wrong about all of it. What Connor forgot, in his rush to serve me divorce papers on our anniversary like some kind of twisted power move, was that I wrote our prenuptial agreement. Not his lawyer. Not some corporate firm his father recommended. Me. With my father's help, I'd crafted every single clause, every protection, every consequence. And I'd buried one particular clause deep in the document, written in careful legal language that looked boring and standard. A clause about infidelity. A clause Connor never bothered to read because he'd been too busy that week closing a deal at work. He just signed where his lawyer pointed, laughed, and said, "Whatever makes you feel safe, babe." That paper was going to be his undoing. 3 years ago, when I proposed the prenup, Connor had laughed. We were sitting in my tiny apartment, the one I'd lived in while building my design firm from nothing. My father had insisted I protect myself before marrying Connor. "You're bringing assets into this marriage," Dad had said firmly. "Make sure they stay yours." Connor worked in commercial real estate, making decent money but nothing compared to what my design business was already generating. He'd shrugged when I brought up the prenup. "Sure, whatever. I'm not marrying you for money anyway." His lawyer reviewed it quickly, nodded approval, and Connor signed without reading past the first page. I remember watching his pen move across the signature line, knowing he had no idea what he was agreeing to. I'd felt guilty then, like I was tricking him. I didn't feel guilty anymore. Standing in that restaurant with divorce papers in my hands, I felt something else entirely. Vindication. Because my father's warning echoed in my head, "Protect yourself, Maggie." Always. My father never trusted Connor. "Too polished," he'd said after meeting him the first time. "Too agreeable. Men like that don't show their real faces until they think you're trapped." I'd called Dad controlling, old-fashioned, stuck in some outdated mindset about relationships. I defended Connor passionately, insisting Dad just didn't understand modern love. Connor was charming and successful and told me I was beautiful every single day. What more could I want? Turns out, Dad was just experienced. He'd seen men like Connor before. Men who smiled and said the right things while their eyes calculated what they could gain. Men who supported their wives' careers until those careers became more successful than their own. Men who married for love but divorced for ego. "Just promise me you'll protect your business," Dad had insisted during our last conversation before the wedding. "Whatever happens, don't let anyone take what you've built." I'd promised. And unlike Connor, I'd actually read what I was signing. I woke up the morning after our anniversary dinner to an empty bed. Connor hadn't come home. His side was untouched, the sheets still perfectly smooth from when I'd made the bed yesterday morning. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification from his social media. Against my better judgment, I opened it. A story posted 2 hours ago. A champagne glass clinking against another glass. The caption read, "New Beginnings." The hand holding the other glass wore red nail polish and delicate gold bracelets. Definitely not my hand. He wanted me to see it. He wanted me to know he'd spent our anniversary night with someone else. He wanted me to feel discarded, replaced, thrown away like I meant nothing. My hands shook as I screenshot the post. Then I opened my messages and sent it to my father with 3 words, "You were right." His response came immediately, "Call your lawyer." Now. I did. My best friend Kelsey sent me a screenshot 30 minutes later. Connor had changed his relationship status to single. Public. For everyone to see. Someone had commented, "Finally free?" Connor replied with a laughing emoji. I stared at my phone screen, reading that comment thread over and over. Finally free. Like our marriage had been prison. Like I'd been holding him hostage instead of supporting him through 2 job changes and a failed business venture that had cost us $20,000. Kelsey called immediately. "Maggie, please tell me you're not alone right now." "I'm fine," I lied, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're not fine. This is insane. On your anniversary? Who does that?" "Someone who thinks he's already won," I replied. And that's when I realized something important. Connor wasn't just leaving me. He was humiliating me. He was making sure everyone knew he'd moved on, that he'd found someone better, that I'd been insufficient somehow. He wanted me broken. Instead, I got angry. Her name was Paige. She was 24, worked as his assistant at the real estate firm, and apparently had terrible boundaries. I'd met her twice at company events. She'd smiled sweetly, complimented my dress, and called me Mrs. Colburn with perfect politeness. The first real proof came from an email. Paige had forgotten to BCC me on a calendar invite titled, "Private Dinner, C and P," with a heart emoji. The location was listed as Rosewood Hotel. The date was 2 weeks before our anniversary. I felt my stomach twist as I read it. He wasn't even hiding it well. He just assumed I wouldn't notice, wouldn't care, or wouldn't check his work email that occasionally synced to our shared iPad. I screenshot everything. The calendar invite. The hotel reservation confirmation I found in his deleted emails. The expense report showing dinners for 2 charged to his corporate card on nights he'd told me he was working late. Every piece of evidence went into a folder I labeled Connor's Mistakes. My lawyer would love this. I didn't scream. I didn't post angry messages on social media. I didn't call Connor crying and begging for explanations. Instead, I opened my laptop, found the prenup PDF saved in my documents, and reread every single word. There it was. Section 7, buried between clauses about property division and retirement accounts. The language was dry and technical, but the meaning was crystal clear. In the event of proven infidelity by either party, the offending spouse forfeits all claims to shared assets and assumes full responsibility for legal fees incurred during dissolution proceedings. I smiled. Actually smiled sitting alone in my living room at 6 in the morning. Because Connor had absolutely forgotten I'd written this. He'd forgotten I'd insisted on this specific clause. He'd forgotten my father was a financial attorney who knew exactly how to protect his daughter's assets. Connor thought he was 3 steps ahead. He had no idea I'd been 5 steps ahead for 3 years. Connor tried to transfer funds that afternoon. I got an alert on my phone. Unauthorized access attempt on my business account. The system had rejected his login credentials. He didn't know my father had set up that account under a family trust before Connor and I even got engaged. He didn't know every asset related to my design firm was protected behind legal structures he couldn't touch. He'd assumed that marriage meant automatic access to everything I owned. He was learning otherwise. My phone rang. Connor's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. 5 times in 20 minutes. Finally, a text, "Why can't I access the account? We need to talk about finances." I replied with one word, lawyer. Then I blocked his number. Whatever Connor wanted to say to me, he could say it through our attorneys. I was done having conversations with a man who'd served me divorce papers on our anniversary and then spent the night with his assistant. His attorney reached out to mine 3 days later. The message was predictable. Connor was willing to offer me a fair settlement. He'd keep the apartment we bought together. I'd keep my business. We'd split savings 50-50. Quick, clean, amicable. My lawyer, Fiona, called me immediately. He thinks you're going to fold. I know. Are you? Not even close, I said. Send him the prenup. There was a pause. Then Fiona laughed. Actually laughed on a business call. Oh, Maggie. I'm going to enjoy this case. She sent Connor's lawyer a copy of our signed prenuptial agreement, highlighting Section 7. The infidelity clause. The clause that voided all his claims the second he'd started sleeping with Paige. Connor's lawyer called Fiona back within an hour, claiming the prenup was invalid, unenforceable, signed under duress. All the standard arguments failing husbands make when they realize they've made catastrophic mistakes. Fiona shut him down with case law and precedent. Then she mentioned we had evidence. Time-stamped, documented, public evidence. The call ended quickly after that. Paige posted a photo on social media. A soft launch, as Kelsey called it. Just Connor's hand holding hers, both their fingers intertwined. The caption read, "Sometimes the right person was there all along." My lawyer screenshot it instantly. Digital confession. Time-stamped. Public. Posted before our divorce was even filed in court. Connor couldn't unring that bell. He couldn't claim it was a misunderstanding or that the relationship started after our separation. Paige had just handed us proof on a silver platter. Fiona sent the screenshot to Connor's lawyer with a simple message: Section 7 applies. Your client has voided all spousal claims per the prenuptial agreement signed and notarized on May 14. Recommend your client accept these terms. I imagined Connor's face when his lawyer showed him that message. I imagined the panic setting in. The realization that his perfect exit strategy had just collapsed. It felt better than I'd expected. My sister found out about the prenup clause the next day. She called me screaming. You wrote it? The whole thing? And he just signed it? Dad helped me, I explained calmly. We made sure everything was legal and enforceable. Maggie, do you know what you've done? I protected myself, I said quietly. For the first time in this marriage. There was silence on the other end. Then my sister's voice came back softer. I'm proud of you. Dad would be proud too. Dad had passed away 8 months ago. Heart attack, sudden and devastating. Connor had held my hand at the funeral, promised we'd get through it together. 2 months later, he was sleeping with Paige. Dad knew, I said. He knew men like Connor existed. That's why he made me write that prenup. Thank God you listened to him. Yeah, I agreed, my throat tight with emotion. Thank God. Connor called me from a different number. I answered without thinking, and suddenly his voice filled my car through the Bluetooth speaker. Maggie, please. We need to talk. He sounded desperate. Actually desperate. I miss us, he continued. I miss you. This whole thing with Paige, it was a mistake. I felt pressured. She pursued me and I was weak. I almost laughed. He was panicking. I forgive you, I said calmly. You do? Hope flooded his voice. Yes. I forgive you for showing me exactly who you are. I paused. Goodbye, Connor. I hung up and blocked that number too. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't missing our marriage. He was realizing that his plan to upgrade from me to Paige while keeping half my assets had just exploded in his face. He was scrambling, trying any tactic to avoid the consequences of his choices. Too late. I was done being the understanding wife who smoothed over his mistakes. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. Connor wanted to amicably dissolve the marriage in mediation. His lawyer pushed hard for that option, probably hoping to negotiate away the prenup's teeth in a less formal setting. Fiona recommended we refuse. Let him walk into court confident, she said. Confidence is easiest to weaponize right before it shatters. I agreed. We'd meet in court, in front of a judge, with everything documented and official. No backroom negotiations. No last-minute deals. Just the prenup he'd signed and the evidence he'd created himself. Connor sent flowers to my office. 24 roses with a card that read, "I'm sorry. Can we please talk before court?" I had them delivered to a nursing home down the street. The receptionist sent me a photo of elderly residents smiling with the bouquets. At least someone got joy from Connor's panic. Connor's mother texted me 3 days before the hearing. "You'll always be my daughter," she wrote. Then added, "But please don't ruin him. He made a mistake. Don't destroy his whole life." I stared at that message for a long time. His mother had been kind to me during our marriage. She'd welcomed me into their family, taught me her recipes, called me every week just to chat. I genuinely loved her. But she was asking me to protect her son from consequences he'd earned himself. I replied, "He ruined himself the second he served me divorce papers on our anniversary. I'm just holding him to terms he agreed to." She didn't respond. I felt a pang of sadness about losing her. But I felt something stronger too. I felt certain I was doing the right thing. Connor had gambled that I'd be too kind, too forgiving, too afraid of conflict to actually enforce the prenup. He'd gambled wrong. On court day, I wore a white dress. Not a wedding dress, just a simple white linen dress I'd worn on our wedding day for our courthouse ceremony. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just wanted Connor to remember what he'd thrown away. Kelsey drove me to the courthouse. "You look stunning," she said. "Like an avenging angel." "I feel weirdly calm," I admitted. "That's because you know you've already won." She was right. Walking into that courthouse, I felt no anxiety. Just quiet certainty. Connor had written this ending himself when he'd signed papers he didn't bother reading. Fiona met us in the lobby. She was wearing her power suit, the navy one she saved for cases she knew she'd win. "Ready?" she asked. "Absolutely." We walked into the courtroom together. Connor was already seated with his lawyer. And he was wearing a new Rolex. Connor smiled when he saw me. Actually smiled, like he was still in control of this situation. Like the expensive watch on his wrist proved he was winning somehow. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Judge Harrison was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She'd reviewed all our filings already, including the prenup. "Be seated," she said. "We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Connor Colburn and Maggie Colburn." She looked at both of us. "I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement submitted by Mrs. Colburn's attorney." "Mr. Colburn, did you have independent legal counsel when you signed this document?" Connor's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My client was represented by attorney Thomas Wells of Wells and Associates." "And did you read this agreement before signing, Mr. Colburn?" Connor hesitated. His lawyer whispered something to him. Yes, Your Honor. I read it." Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Then I assume you understood Section 7. The infidelity clause." The courtroom went silent. Connor froze. His face went pale. His lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently, but Connor just stared at the judge like he'd been slapped. "Your Honor," Connor's lawyer began, "we believe that clause is unenforceable. It's punitive rather than protective." Judge Harrison looked unimpressed. "The clause is clearly written, mutually agreed upon, and legally sound. Both parties had representation. Both parties signed voluntarily." She flipped through the papers in front of her. Mrs. Colburn's attorney has submitted substantial evidence of Mr. Colburn's infidelity, including social media posts, calendar invitations, and expense reports. Would you like to dispute this evidence? Connor's lawyer shuffled papers desperately. Your Honor, the relationship with Ms. Page began after my client and his wife had separated emotionally. The marriage was already over. The marriage was legally intact when Mr. Colburn served divorce papers on their anniversary, Judge Harrison said sharply. The evidence shows his relationship with Ms. Page began at least 2 months prior to that date. Section 7 applies. Connor looked like he might be sick. In that moment, everyone in the room realized the same thing. He had no idea what he'd signed 3 years ago. Judge Harrison read through the ruling methodically. The prenuptial agreement is enforceable. Mr. Colburn's claims to shared assets are voided per Section 7. Mrs. Colburn retains sole ownership of the marital home, purchased primarily with funds from her business earnings prior to marriage. Mr. Colburn retains his personal vehicle and personal savings account. Connor was shaking his head, whispering to his lawyer frantically. Additionally, the judge continued, per Section 7, Mr. Colburn is responsible for all legal fees incurred by both parties during these proceedings. She signed the document in front of her. Divorce is granted. Court is adjourned. It was over in 20 minutes. Connor sat frozen in his chair as people filed out of the courtroom. His expensive watch caught the light. His designer suit suddenly looked like a costume. He wasn't just losing me. He was leaving with almost nothing. I walked past him without looking back. Fiona touched my arm gently. Well done, Maggie. Outside the courthouse, Kelsey was waiting. She hugged me tight. How do you feel? Free, I said. And I meant it. 2 days later, Paige deleted all their photos from social media. Every single one. The hand-holding picture, the champagne toast, the soft launch that had seemed so romantic. All gone. She posted a new selfie instead. Solo, filtered, with a caption that read, Healing Era. Kelsey sent me the screenshots. She dumped him. I wasn't surprised. Paige hadn't signed up to date a man who'd just lost his home and taken on massive legal debt. She'd wanted the successful real estate agent with money and prospects. She'd gotten a divorced man facing financial ruin. Connor had lost me, the money, the apartment, and now Paige. A clean sweep. I almost feel bad for him, Kelsey said. Almost? Yeah, almost. Then I remember he served you divorce papers on your anniversary with chocolate letters that said, Happy Anniversary. Right, I said. That. We both laughed. It felt good to laugh. It felt good to be on the other side of the worst part. Connor applied for a job at a firm I'd done branding work for last year. Their CEO, Amanda, emailed me directly. Connor Colburn listed you as a character reference. I wanted to reach out personally. I sat with that email for a long time. Finally, I replied, I'd prefer not to provide a reference. However, I'm attaching relevant court documents that you may find informative for your hiring decision. I attached the divorce decree, including the sections about infidelity and voided claims. Amanda responded within 2 hours, Thank you for your candor. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Connor's job offer was rescinded within 24 hours. Was it petty? Maybe. But he tried to use my professional reputation as a reference while actively destroying my personal life. He'd assumed I'd play nice, protect him, help him even after everything he'd done. He'd assumed wrong. Again. I took myself to Paris 3 months after the divorce was finalized. Connor and I had planned this trip for our 5th anniversary. We'd talked about the hotels we'd stay in, the restaurants we'd try, the museums we'd visit together. I went alone instead. I stayed at the Hotel Plaza Athénée, in a room with a balcony overlooking the Eiffel Tower. I ate at Michelin-starred restaurants and ordered whatever I wanted without checking prices. I spent an entire afternoon at the Musée d'Orsay, staring at paintings until my feet hurt. On my last night, I went to a rooftop bar. I ordered champagne and watched the city lights sparkle below. I raised my glass to no one in particular. To the woman I became after someone underestimated me, I whispered. The champagne was perfect. The night was perfect. And I was completely, totally alone. It was the best trip of my life. When I returned to work, my design firm had landed 3 new major contracts. My team had handled everything beautifully while I was gone. The business I'd protected so carefully was thriving. My assistant showed me the new client list. One of them specifically requested you because of an article they read. What article? She pulled it up on her computer. A business magazine had run a feature on female entrepreneurs protecting their assets through smart legal planning. They'd interviewed Fiona about prenups, and she'd mentioned my case as an example without using names. But apparently, people had figured it out anyway. My story had spread through business circles. The woman who wrote a prenup her husband didn't read. The designer who protected her company and her dignity. I was getting consulting requests from other women now. Women starting businesses who wanted advice on legal protection. Women getting married who wanted to understand what they were signing. My private pain had become something useful. Something that might help others avoid the same mistakes. Connor emailed me once, 6 months after everything was finalized. Subject line, closure. I stared at that email in my inbox for 3 days. I drafted responses. Deleted them. Drafted new ones. Deleted those too. Finally, I did something different. I archived it without opening it. Because closure wasn't something Connor could give me. It wasn't a conversation or an explanation or an apology. Closure was something I'd earned myself by protecting my business, by standing up in court, by refusing to let his betrayal define my future. Closure was the moment I'd stopped checking his social media. Stopped wondering what he was doing or who he was with. Stopped caring whether he regretted his choices. Closure was drinking champagne alone in Paris and feeling grateful instead of lonely. I already had closure. I didn't need Connor's email to give it to me. A year after Connor served me divorce papers on our anniversary, I attended a charity gala for women in business. I wore a black dress that cost more than my entire wardrobe had 3 years ago. My firm had sponsored a table. During the cocktail hour, a young woman approached me nervously. Are you Maggie Colburn? I am. I heard your story. About the prenup. She glanced at the man standing awkwardly beside her. We're getting married next month. His family wants me to sign an agreement, but I don't really understand what it says. I looked at her uncertain expression, at the man who clearly had no idea what his fiancée was about to sign. I saw myself 3 years ago, younger and more trusting. Read every word, I told her firmly. Hire your own lawyer. Make sure you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. But his family already has lawyers. Get your own anyway. Protect yourself. Not because you expect the worst, but because you deserve to know what you're signing. She nodded slowly. Thank you. I watched her walk away, hoping she'd actually do it. Hoping she'd protect herself the way my father had taught me to. Because in the end, that prenup Connor forgot to read didn't just save my business. It saved my sense of self-worth. It taught me that protecting yourself isn't the same as not trusting someone. It's recognizing that love and legal protection can coexist. Connor had thought I was weak because I was kind. He'd thought I wouldn't fight because I'd never fought before. He'd learned the hard way that the woman who writes the prenup always wins. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something so successful that your betrayer becomes irrelevant to your story. Mine was just beginning.